This is the Four Principles, Season 1, Chapter 2. In this episode, we will be discussing nuclear fission from the standpoint of the outward-facing application of the Four Principles and drawing conclusions about dual valence and digital streams from the inward-facing application of the Four Principles. In the last episode, we talked about how the Four Principles can be applied to any technology in an outward-facing application by showing how the Four Principles, polarity, substitution, and displacement, union and conservation break down the processes of that technology. We briefly mentioned nuclear fission as one such technology, to which could be applied the outward and inward-facing application of the Four Principles. In this episode, we will be looking at fission from the standpoint of the Four Principles and showing how structures describing elements, such as uranium-235, as a single digital stream, can be represented by dual valence structures. That is, we will be moving from the outward-facing application of the Four Principles to the inward-facing. It is important to note that we are not asserting that elements and nuclei can be represented by digital structures directly. Rather, what we are positing is that fission, as a human technology, must be represented within the structures of consciousness part and parcel of the human mind. That is, the processes of fission are reflected by certain transformations of the structures describing consciousness. What we will be doing is working backward from outward application of the Four Principles to the structures of consciousness, outward to inward, to assert a possible arrangement and transformation of the structures of consciousness in parallel to the reactions of fission. A cursory analysis of the process of fission identifies four stages. First, the free neutron enters the uranium-235 to form a union with the heavy element. This substitution leads to splitting of that element, polarity, into two or more fission products and free neutrons, displacement. As a result of conservation of energy, this releases energy in the form of kinetic energy into the surrounding environment. These free neutrons start the process all over again with the next uranium-235 nucleus. Now, it must be said that the initial neutron is from a lower scale than the uranium-235 nucleus, which is composed of neutrons and protons. It could represent a nonlinear interaction with that element. From the above we can see the following. If we imagine that the uranium-235 is a structure with affirmation of impulse 1 and negation of impulse not 1, then that structure can be represented as three structures, describing the fission products in dual valence, such that the knot set of impulse 1 is subdivided into two knot sets in the dual valence structure, describing the fission products. So originally we have a single structure, with affirmation of impulse 1 and negation of impulse not 1. We can represent this structure as a three-part structure in dual valence, with impulse 2 affirmed in the first structure, impulse not 2 negated, with impulse 2 affirmed and impulse 3 negated in the adjacent analog structure. And then for the third digital structure, impulse 3 negated and impulse not 3 affirmed. In other words, we represent the electromagnetic polarity, which splits the heavy uranium-235, as a dialectical analog structure joining the two digital structures, describing the fission products. In this understanding, the dual valence structure describes two streams going through the same vessel, which we observe as the element uranium-235. These streams are held in the same vessel against the polarity of the analog structure. When the neutron, in this description a nonlinear intersection, flips the phase of one of the two digital structures, this results in the two streams entering two different vessels, and the three-part structure is no longer in dual valence. The two digital structures are released from the analog structure, as two digital streams going into two vessels replace the two streams entering a single vessel. When the original structure describing impulses 1 and not 1 is represented by two digital structures representing impulses 2 and 3 and not 2 and not 3, we can say that there is a relationship between the sets corresponding to 1 and 2 and 3, such that the subdivision of 1 results in 2 and 3. That is, nuclear fission is represented by the following. 1. The representation of one stream as two streams entering the same vessel in dual valence. 2. The subdivision of the set corresponding to the impulse in the first stream. 3. Dual valence with respect to the subdivided structures. 4. A nonlinear intersection breaking that dual valence. 5. The missing components of the knot set describing its nonlinear impact on adjacent structures. In general, we can conclude that it is possible to represent certain impulse sets within digital structures as complexes of subsidiary structures in other arrangements, such as dual valence. It is also possible to see that a single digital stream can be represented by two or more streams entering the same vessel. Of course, again, we are not suggesting that these digital structures describe the process of fission directly, but rather that reflected in consciousness are transformations of digital structures, which reflect the technology of nuclear fission playing out in the external world. We are merely working backward from the four principles in one spatial scale to the four principles within digital structures describing consciousness. That's the end of the podcast for today.